Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Virginia Wright, and I'm the Director of Development for the library. And I wanted to welcome you all here. We're going to have a little talk with Anthony Chow, the Director of the iSchool, and Mike Meth, the Dean of the library. And we'll be talking about the evolving library in relationship to evolving technology and emerging technologies, and what benefits and challenges kind of emerge from that, and how libraries and librarians can hold space and for information access that is positive and is beneficial to society, sort of holding that space. And so I think most of the folks here, you know who you are, you know what the library is, you know what the iSchool is. I'll just quickly say that the iSchool and the library are both part of San Jose State University, and they're very different, but they serve the same need. One educates the people, and the other holds the actual physical space and the digital space of the library. So I think we will start. And what we're going to do is I will have a conversation that will sort of take off. I'm sure that it looks like a drone might be involved as part of this. And then from there, we'll take a break for questions and talk about the future of where libraries and information specialists might be involved in technology. And then we're going to end, and we'll have a space for the online folks to go into a breakout room, and the in-person people to enjoy each other's company. And sorry about this, online people, but have a little food and drink that's over on the side there. So it's informal, and we'll just take it from there. Okay.
Great, thank you.
So Anthony, do you want to let us know who you are? How did you come to the information school, and what brings you here? Sort of a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank King Library for hosting this event, and Virginia for you moderating. It's a real privilege to be here. I started actually in psychology, and my master's is actually educational psychology, which then really connected me to technology. So when we think about providing instruction, organizing knowledge, technology, it's all about technology. So ultimately, I worked for an internet company, and then discovered information science as a faculty member at the state. Go Knowles. And once I realized the power of organizing information and delivering information and working on the information seeking match with the user so that they can find what they're looking for as quickly as possible, I fell in love with the field. Right. And so I never look back in terms of technology, because technology really it's superpowers us to be able to meet users where they are. Of course, there's a host of problems as well, but in terms of the ability to meet all of the needs of users and where they need it just in time, it's a wonderful time. So I'm here as the director because I've been in the field for 23 years, and I think I've learned a thing or two, humbled, as well as some wisdom as well. So, and Mike and I were just talking about what a privilege it is to be, because we both spent time in Tallahassee, Florida, to be here in the heart of Silicon Valley, having conversations like this with you. What a privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mike, what about you? What's your background, and what do you do here at the library?
I'll start with the last part. That's the easy one. Well, maybe, but I'm the dean of the library here at SJSU. I have the privilege of directing this organization and being a shepherd of it in the process here. I have been at SJSU since October of 2021, so coming up on 2 years. But I came to SJSU and into librarianship by a very roundabout way. So I'm the kid that when I was young, I went to libraries, found my books, tried to find an author, read the whole series, found the next author, eventually read the whole series. But I never at the time realized that libraries would be a profession. So then I was in Germany. Then I moved to Canada and went to high school there, went to university, worked actually at the university library. It was a part-time job. I learned all about the stacks and how information is organized. I was a business school student, so we didn't use the library too much for that, but that's a whole nother issue. But also at the time, never really thought of the library as a career. Ended up working in finance after graduation, did that for about 5 years. Realized that I was on the analytics side and really learned about information literacy, but actually through a finance angle, trying to really dig in, understand what is being presented, how it's being presented. Somewhere along the way, I realized I needed something a little bit more fulfilling in life. And I ended up enrolling at the University of Toronto in their high school, which that was just before it actually converted to an high school. It was still, my master's is still the Master's of Information Studies. So it was the Faculty of Information Studies. I pursued the degree on a part-time basis at first, and then in the end, I fell in love with the library side of it. I actually thought I was going to go in for the tech side, so kind of where Anthony started as well, but really enjoyed the library classes more. I graduated, looked for librarian jobs. It was a weird time, just the economics and financial crises of things. And so there were hiring freezes all over the place. So I actually ended up in corporate again, and I got into a research function and an executive search firm. So I worked in executive search for a couple of years, but I remembered why I left finance. And that's the same reason why I left executive search, because you want to do something different and be in a non-for-profit world. And by happenstance, I went for dinner with a friend of mine, and she said, Mike, we're looking for somebody who can qualify as a librarian and who has a background in finance, because we're opening this finance learning center. And so I was hired as the inaugural director of the Lee Kun Chun Finance Learning Center at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. It's a mouthful, but after many years, I figured out to say it like that. And that was really amazing, because I started working in the university and I started really seeing the impact that we have on students, on faculty in our community. And that got me hooked. So I worked there for about 4 years. I had an opportunity to move to the main campus of the University of Toronto in the education library. I had the privilege of guiding that library for about 2.5 years. Then Florida State gave me a call, and I ended up in Tallahassee as the associate dean there for research and learning services. And about 2 years ago, I had conversations with this university, and you already know the ending. So I'm here at SJSU now, so the Spartans and Noles, I guess. But it's been a really fascinating journey. And in many ways, I think it's my own, this is the evolving library, but this has also been the evolution of Mike that got me here. And so that's how I got into this.
It's interesting that you both have background, excuse me,
Take your time.
background in business and in academics. So you have this, you both have a span sort of you can understand where businesses is, where corporations are thinking, and you can also understand where universities and learnings are thinking. So that's interesting. And you both are here committed to the other side. I mean, and understanding the business side, but committed to the learning and to people understanding how to work with information that is more beneficial, than I will say. I try not to say too much about capitalism driving information. So, but I think it's interesting that you both have those perspectives.
Well, I think the word you might be looking for is entrepreneurial. And I'm a big believer that entrepreneurial does not have to be pejorative, but rather looking for opportunities again to create things, situations that maybe didn't exist before, right? And being able to, again, provide information, connect information, serve people. So I brought the drone because I'm a big fan of drones, because it changes our view of the world, right? So when you're looking up at a mountain, you're looking up at a mountain. What if you look down on a mountain, right? So the whole perspective has changed. And so yeah, I think entrepreneurial is a good word, because we're very flexible, and I think innovative is part of the equation. Actually, it's part of survival, to be honest, in this really supercharged information digital world. So.
Well, Mike, I want to ask you a quick question, or maybe it has a long answer, which is the name of this event we're having today is the Evolving Library.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were thinking about that, what is it that you were thinking about in terms of evolving library and the relationship between the evolving library and evolving technology, especially here where we are in Silicon Valley? It's like we are at the center, one of the centers, maybe the center of evolving new technologies, and they have pros and cons, and benefits and challenges. And so what's the response of a library to that?
Well, the name, we were thinking when we came up with this idea about how do we talk about where we are and where we might be going. So many people are just reading about ChatGPT, for example, and AI. We're talking about blockchain and robotics, and we'll talk some more about that. But the underlying thought for me anyway was that as long as libraries have existed, libraries have evolved. That's just the reality, right? We have recorded the record of human knowledge in any way, shape possible, whether it was in clay tablets, in scrolls, in print, first in typeset and then in mass print, and now more and more shifting into digital. So libraries have always evolved around the technologies, around the communities, around the needs of those who we are serving, because libraries don't exist for the sake of libraries. We exist for the sake of the communities that we interact with. So while I can't speak for all libraries, I think my expertise is more in academic libraries. You know, when I think about it, I really think about the different aspects that make up what I think of the academic library anyway. And we have clearly our spaces, and there's the virtual as well as our physical spaces. We have our collections, virtual and physical. We have our services, place-based, virtual, place-based, and also virtual. And all of that is underpinned by the technology that's available to us and the human capital, the intelligence that we have, the people that we have in our organizations working for and with us. And that's why I'm also one of the reasons why I'm so excited that we are created this dialogue, because Anthony and I were sort of reflecting on what we have created here. And we don't have another forum where the educator representing the future of the workforce of the information profession sits together with the practitioners as we are in the academic library. So very, very excited about that. Now, specifically for us at SJSU, we have evolved in so many ways. And I draw on the history that's been told to me as well as what I've experienced. But even in the 2 years that I've been here, we have made so many different changes. I'm sure everybody remembers about two years ago, we were still unsure about whether we're ever going to open buildings again and meet face to face. And I look around, and although we have more people online, which is also wonderful, we have people here in the room, and we are talking to each other in this way that feels like in the before time, right? The other BC, before COVID. The way that we've evolved here for us at SJSU is that our spaces needed to consistently transition. Because even during COVID, the library never shut down. The physical building may have, but the services never stopped. We just found ways to evolve them to approximate what we knew the needs are of our users. And then we kept on evolving them based on the feedback that we got. So whether it was document delivery and shifting to scanning, whether it's providing access to more resources, whether it's digitization services or chat moved online, all of that. And then our spaces had to adapt, right? The way that we had people work together at tables, not together in different study rooms, all of that. I mentioned already our services, how they've shifted. Our collections, the same thing. We keep on thinking about how do we improve our collections? Our library has been for many years an e-preferred library, but at the same time, we still collect print. We also collect digital, of course. We also have special collections, and there's a big impetus for us. How do we collect this record, the truly unique record, the personal stories? Just earlier this month, we celebrated the inauguration of the Harry Edwards collection. Harry Edwards was one of the founders of the Olympic Project for Human Rights, and the outcome of that Olympic Project for Human Rights, among other things, is the Carlos and Smith statue that we have right outside of Clark Hall. So a lot of people don't realize that the history of sports activism and empowering the Black athletes started here at SJSU. And having the record of Harry Edwards, Dr. Harry Edwards, here at the library accessible is something that helps us tell those stories. On the technology side, we've also been leading in many ways, and we're looking to lead more. We're just talking about robotics, for example, now. I think we'll save that for maybe the next question, just to foreshadow that, but also we have moved currently, for example, our reference service entirely online. And that's based on the feedback that we receive from our community and the questions that we see. We have led in having symposia on NFTs and artificial intelligence. And when we do that work, it's because we want to be in the conversation. So often, libraries and the academia we're a recipient of commercial entities, what you start speaking about, who are developing products for us. Whereas what we're trying to do is we're trying to actually lead in those conversations. We're trying to be the ones that are engaging actively in the dialogue and see, is this something that fits for us? Is this something we want to incorporate? And if so, how do we do it in a way that is right for us? And when I say for us, I come back to the idea of our community. How do we do that? And then the work that we've been doing working on developing our team, the work that we've been doing on working on anti-racism and DEI initiatives is also part of our evolution. The record of academia is often very white, very Western, very male, and we're trying to find ways that we can diversify as well. So these are all examples of evolution, and all of these evolving trends that we have, and all these, I guess the evolutions themselves are all based on what we understand our scholars want for the research, for the teaching. And by scholars, I talk about students and faculty and the emeritus faculty, and maybe also prospective students. We're really trying to understand how we do that. The other thing that I want to just quickly address is that also this library itself is the process of an evolution. There used to be a library on this side a long, long time ago. Then Clark Hall was all opened, and then a new library was built here, and that's the library we're in right now, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Library. It was opened 20 years ago this year, so we're going to be celebrating. And one of the evolutions that we have here is that this is the first library at this scale that is a joint library between a university library and a city library. And that evolution, in my opinion, is also something that is incredibly intriguing, because the way we can work with our community in San Jose and in Santa Clara County is something that is unparalleled based on what I've seen. So
yeah, you make, when you're talking, it feels like the library is a very alive, it's a very moving, constantly moving.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful way to put it. We are, one of the things that and I'll turn over to you in a second, that, very often when folks want to talk to us about the library, they want to measure us by how many books we have, how many physical items do we hold. And that is an important thing that we do. The storage of the record, the preservation, the making it accessible and findable is hugely important, but it's only one aspect of all the things that we do. And that's, again, how libraries have evolved. And I very rarely have a conversation with somebody, and at the end of it, they don't say, I didn't know the library. And to me, that is an outstanding thing that happens, that we can keep on educating and we serve our community.
I'm going to ask a similar kind of question, which is about the information professionals and librarians. And I thought, I'm somewhat new to library sciences, so I thought, well, what are the other people working in information that are not librarians? And so I went to the site, and I counted over 70 professions that are just listed on. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to tell you all. You all are of those people. It's really impressive. So how is that evolving in response, especially in response to technology and the evolution of technologies? How is the profession changing?
Well, I just finished a draft of a book chapter for Dr. Hirsch over here, her book 2035, and she didn't put me up to that. But the field actually the mission of the library really hasn't changed very much. But how we accomplish that mission is changing rapidly. So I'll use an example. So I had the privilege of being the faculty senate chair at UNC Greensboro when the pandemic hit. And I remember the president of the UNC system, he said, I didn't even know what a Zoom was before the pandemic, but then because of the pandemic, and so case in point, maybe a quarter of our faculty at the time pre-pandemic even knew what video conferencing was. Afterwards, 100%. But I think you'd be surprised by my answer, because I do think it really is a combination of physical and digital spaces, right? And so how does that impact education? Well, the environments and how we do our jobs are disrupted, right? Disrupted in every way possible. The technology the access to the technology. So one of the things that our students have to be is courageous to learn these types of technology. Why? Because equity of access. So what we do know is that we're all familiar with the digital divide. Well, now that more and more services are going to be digital only, the digital divide is increasing rapidly, right? So the other day, a service person said, asked me what I was doing, and I said I was going to the American Library Association conference. And again, many of us have heard it. There's still libraries. And I'm like, yeah, there's not only still libraries, but they're more important than ever. So equity of access, but as far as the skill sets, like you said, 70 plus, and there's many more than that. As an information professional, the sky's the limit, really. If you want to help people in library, being an LS professional is a great place to be, because you can do so much, whether it be physical or digital, or servicing the robot, or being a virtual chat, or it's just really this instruction, digital archives, and artificial intelligence. It's just the sky's the limit. And so as far as preparing, I think very selfishly, I'm attached to Dean Meth at the hip, because we want to learn what he needs from us, right? We need to know what's happening in the field so that we can prepare our students for that. And I think, in conclusion, it's being courageous, it's being fearless, and then go do what you want to do. This field is wide open. Any way you want to help people.
I'll just quickly add to that, speaking of evolutions and preparing in this field, the job that I have today and the jobs I've had in between, many of them didn't exist when it's coming up. Well, there was a dean here, but it was a very different job. But so many of these jobs that we're training for right now, the next generation, they're going to be working in 10, 15 years with technologies that nobody knew about.
That's right.
They'll be working in companies that haven't been invented. They'll be working in organizations that are completely different today than they will be. And some will be changes that are driven by technology, some will be driven by other factors. But this openness, learning the mindset, learning the frameworks, being able to connect that to practice, that's where the magic happens. And to us, that's why, for one reason, I value my MLIS degree, or MIST. I was the last of the MIST group, but that to me is what I took away from my degree. It is the exposure and it's learning frameworks, and that was really outstanding.
Yeah.
I heard courageous from you, and I heard values of coming to the universities because it suited something that was important to you in your values. And so I'm hearing values, and I'm curious, what do you think the values are grounded in the university that you can bring to technology and the technology, people who are managing information in the future? I hear courageous. Maybe just a little bit more about what are the, I hear diversity, equity, inclusion. I hear, but what are some of the other kinds of values that are here that you can bring to the world and to tech?
You want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, so again, I use the word courageous because I think part of our job as educators, period, but certainly as LS professionals, is to be pioneers so we can share that with our patrons, right? In other words, if I don't learn a drone, I can't share with people how drones work. I can't share the beauty of what the photography drones can take. And that's the same for all educators, right? We must push the envelope so that we can bring that to our students. The other thing, certainly, is students, the best type of teacher are people that have those applied experiences, and they're role models to their students because they are courageous and they're asking questions and solving questions and gathering data and reporting those. And so yes, I would say that being a pioneer is a value of our field. And you've got book banning, you've got misinformation, you've got cybersecurity. There's so many things that we must do and work really hard to protect our patrons, because it's very easy to go on the negative end as far as what technology and bad information can do for people. So
right. So like with holding the standard for good information.
Yeah, and also the power to help people. So a case in point, I saw this one individual at a recent conference who was blind and he had a seeing eye dog. And the conference was so big that the poor dog just was not able to negotiate. So the poor gentleman was running into people, and it was technology, I think, has a role to play to help in those experiences, because it was just a blind individual with a dog and
Right.
in a sea of humanity, and it just overwhelmed the poor dog, right? And so I believe technology has a way to help with those kind of situations. So even if it's just one person, we've done really good to help that individual. And so I think LS professions, our profession, you hear it a lot. If libraries don't do it, who's going to do it? Right? If we don't teach digital technology, digital literacy completely for free in any environment in this country, who's going to do it? Right? It's us.
What about you, Mike? What's your values and
Yeah.
what sort of underlies the work?
Well, I would say one of the big privileges of working in an academic environment is that we get to be, and I think we also have a duty to be inquisitive. We have to be able to interrogate, to problematize the issues as they come up. So, and we can do that in a way of inviting in a community of diverse scholars, of diverse experts, of diverse curious people who come from across the disciplines. So we can invite an high school graduate, an engineer, a designer, a musician, a humanist, a social scientist, you name the discipline, we represent that. And so in the university, we have the ability to really look at something through all the different lenses, all the different aspects. And to me, what's the other privilege is that we are not driven by a profit motive. So when we think about, when we design, when we develop, we don't think about who's going to provide us the greatest revenue. What is the market share? How much can we acquire? What we think about is how do we serve the widest array of people who are going to benefit? And how do we make sure we also understand who might be excluded? And how do we bring them in? Our purpose is inclusion. We're trying to be here for as many people as possible across the different spectra that we have on the DEI focus, on anti-racism, on all the different lenses that we have. And we don't have to worry about charging $1 or $10 or $100. We have to worry about how we're going to fund it all. That may be something else, but we're not producing with the intent of generating a product that creates a tangible benefit in form of revenue. And to me, that is one of the reasons why, when I talked earlier about my journey, I removed myself from the for-profit space and entered the not-for-profit space. So when we do the work that we do, a lot of us have a very strong moral compass. I think that is one of the things that you find in the information profession, is that there's a ability to learn about different models, different frameworks, different philosophies, understand politics are not always the same, understand motives aren't always the same, but being able to ask the how, the why, and then looking at how do we solve the problems? How do we guide towards the resources that allow for the problem to be solved, again, for that greatest benefit? And so that's something where we can help with designing the guardrails, with designing the ideas that should guide it, and ask the questions that are not often being asked. You see many of the tech companies laying off their ethics divisions, for example, or several have done that recently. I heard one interview where one of the CEOs said, well, it's just in everybody's job description, they should be doing it. And I think when everybody's doing something, then really nobody is maybe doing it because it's just somebody else's responsibility. That happens too often. And we don't operate in that same way. And again, to me, that's one of the reasons why I love being in the academic environment. It's also because, as you can see, as we look around the table, we have so many different stakeholders represented from so many different areas of the university and outside the university. And some of the folks on Zoom I recognize, and some I have no idea who they are, and it's wonderful. Like, to me, that's the best part of it all.
Well, let's go to the people in the room and the people on the screen and see if there's any questions so far. Does that
Please.
sound?
It'd be wonderful.
So I don't know, Leslie, are you tracking? Is there any questions or that you've
Not at that time, but
coming from the universe outside the room?
online
Okay.
audience, here's your time to ask some questions for Michael and Anthony.
And while we're waiting for that to come through, I wonder if there's any questions here, or comments, or I know a lot of you are professionals in this field, so.
I had a question. I was
Sure.
just thinking about Anthony's, discussion of constantly, pushing the envelope on technology, but from the user perspective, how do you really teach, train all of us who need to learn all this technology? It's like going so fast. It's like overwhelming. So how do you do that?
So
Maybe that's a Mike question. I'm not sure.
I'll answer it as well, but you go first.
yeah,
Susan.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And that is going to be, so libraries are being redefined physically because more and more of the resources are going digital. So what's happening is there really is a renaissance of redesign, and libraries are already beautiful spaces, but they're even becoming more beautiful because a lot of the stacks are going. Right. And so I think that absolutely teaching digital literacy in, we call them petting zoos, is going to be more and more the norm, right? And I think that it's almost kind of a mission, because when you think about rural communities where there's less funding, this kind of technology is expensive, right? And so if libraries aren't showing, we don't know who the next genius is going to be, right? They could be any color and live anywhere in this country. It's the library's role to make sure that they all have equal access to this technology, and it becomes part of the fluency, what we call digital literacy, right, of the future. So I think that's the answers. We have to experiment with it, and we also have to teach it. Not everybody, but I think every library is going to have some kind of lab like this.
In an ideal world, so with that preface, libraries are that petting zoo, as you said, the sandbox where you can come and experience and where you can learn. I can take that drone and I can put it on the table here, and I can say how many of you can fly it. Now, I don't know how many hands would go up, but a lot of people are probably going to be really intimidated. And first, you'd have to figure out what the on button is. Then you got to figure out the controls. Then you got to understand how you're navigating in space. The technology itself is not the answer. The instruction, the ability to experiment in an environment where it's okay to fail, where it's okay to make a mistake, that is what we provide. So in our environment, we have the Clever Lab at SJSU. It's our VR, AR mixed reality space. We have a motion capture studio there. Students from all disciplines can come and work and experience it. We have a sound recording studio. We do student tech training where we teach the software packages and the tools. And one of the nice things that we do in libraries is that folks can come to us. And just like the question that one of them is up on the board right now is an anonymous question, you don't even have to identify who you are. Like, we help you. You don't have to say, I'm an engineering student in this class, or you might be worried if you go to your prof and say, I actually don't know this thing. How does this work? You can come to us and you can explore. And we are that space where you can let your creativity flow and you get that familiarity. And once you have that base familiarity, then you can elevate to that next level. So I think, to me, that's one of the space that we occupy. And we do that. I'm going to answer the questions also up there already that asked about digital divides. That's part of it. So one, I think, is the familiarity with the technology. That is a big problem with digital divides, because we know there are communities that are excluded from access. And we, in libraries, again, our doors are open. Anybody can come in. Our service points are open. Specifically also at SJSU, what we do is we do everything from providing tech loans. So we lend out hundreds of laptops, calculators. We have a makerspace and prototyping lab. We teach, as I mentioned, the VR, AR, mixed reality, motion capture, Adobe products, you name it. There's any number of products that we teach and services that we provide. And the other thing that we do is we also try to be, again, we try to be as open-minded as we can. So one of the projects that we got an IMLS grant for was to provide hotspots to students. So during the pandemic, when everybody was at home, we had a project. And that hotspot project provided solid, stable internet access to, I think it was 150 students. I'm looking at the room if somebody remembers the exact number, but I think it was 150 students, maybe something like that. Let's just go with that number. And I was in a meeting actually in the library that we had that was an enrollment summit, But I sat with somebody who's a graduate of the engineering program, and she said, and I didn't know, she just said, at the end I introduced myself and we talked, and she just said, I was a member of this program. I got the hotspot, and it's the reason why I could complete my classes, because I couldn't afford internet. So what we do is we do as much as we can in the ways that we recognize where the need is. And that's the caveat to it, is that if we need to recognize the need, we need to see it. But if we do, we try to step in the best we can.
And if I may, I just wanted to answer that second question there, the not-for-profit. So as physical books and purchasing of those physical books is decreasing, one would say that libraries are going to have to start investing a little bit more of their budget on this type of emerging technology. And the reason for that is any study will show you that libraries have a high return on investment, and they are the hub of information and scholarly material. And so again, that's saying if libraries don't do it, no one's going to do it, right? And so if I'm a city manager, or if I'm a mayor, or I'm a dean or a provost, I will know if I invest in technology in my libraries, I'm benefiting the entire community, right? I can come in and experiment with things. I can't afford to spend $1,000 on something that right? But you can do that at a library, right? And so by creating those opportunities, you are going to be creating an intellectual environment that will really impact the entire university or community, right? Yeah. So I think going to that question, it really is, again, Betty, it really is an investment in your community. And when we talk about libraries as a hub, I can't think of a better investment than some type of technology lab, right? Where again, think about in particular the lower socioeconomic members of your community that are never going to have access to that. So if you don't provide it, they're not going to have access to it. So.
I know that one of the things that impressed me when I spoke with John Oakes, who runs the VR lab and AR lab, Clever Lab, is he said, when people grow up in a home that has wealth, they have technology just kind of laying around. And they can just go pick up stuff and play with stuff, and they can experiment and not be afraid to fail because they're at home. But here at San Jose State, where you have a lot of first-gen students and you have lower income students, this might be the only place they can come and play with technology and feel like they can have ownership over it, and just not even have a project that's a school project, and just come in and experiment. And that empowers people. Because unless they have that sort of familiarity with trying to figure things out and playing with things, it's a barrier to later professional success in the tech world. So,
in Virginia, I would say it's confidence. It's confidence, right?
Fearless, you said.
Right. Well, you teach that literacy where confidence breeds confidence, right? So it seems intimidating until you try it and realize it's actually not that hard, right? And that breeds that confidence.
I was supposed to say one more quick thing, if that's okay, which is, I remember my first time I got on the internet. It was 1994, and I went on. It was a dial-up connection, but it wasn't my house, because at home we didn't have a computer, and we didn't have, obviously, then no dial-up connection. It was in the school library at my high school. And there's something that we can do at scale here, to Anthony's point and your point, that you can't expect somebody at home to have.
Right.
You can't buy. Well, maybe some people can, but it is San Francisco and the Bay and San Jose. But a lot of households cannot afford to buy all the new tech as it comes out. But we can do it, and we can serve with one drone thousands of students. Right. And by the time you get the unit price down to that, why wouldn't we invest in that? Yeah. Sandy, sorry, you want to jump in?
Go. I wanted to ask
a question.
Yeah, is that?
Yes, this is what it's for. It's a conversation, please.
So you guys have been talking about how libraries and library and information science education has been evolving over time. And Anthony mentioned my book, Library 2035, that I'm working on right now. And also the fact that there are some really major changes in technology that are having some significant impact on day-to-day life, and specifically around artificial intelligence, chat GPT, et cetera. So how do you see libraries and library and information science education evolving in the future to address these challenges, and also to help the community as well? Because these AI and chat GPT and other technologies and things to come have, both positive and negative implications, including potential misinformation, privacy, other challenges. So I guess my question to you is, how do you see the library of the future, library and information science education of the future addressing some of these really important challenges?
Well, I'll start. I'll tell the story of the TV. So when the TV first came out, if you read the articles, teachers were worried that they would all get fired because they could roll a TV in front of a classroom and put, Albert Einstein on there. Why would we need teachers? Well, you see how that worked out, right? So you remember the zip drive, right? So, but anyway, not to say AI is going to go that route, but I would say that we shouldn't be bleeding edge. We should be kind of in that sweet spot where, as society is using the technology, we see how it's working. And also, definitely, the other thing about this digital literacy is it's really for librarians first. Right. I think really librarians have to be in there trying to figure out what works. And in the end, I think, again, the mission stays the same. So it's still information access, it's still information organization, still helping users. And Sandy, I would flip it around and say, get out there and figure out what type of technology can supercharge you to do your job even better. Right. So I don't think there's an answer. I think that it'll evolve. And we were talking about AI versus AI. I think you're going to see a lot more of that too, where there are going to be AI checkers, and there's going to be AI checking AI. And I think for us, it will be to know what type of AI to buy, what staff we need to run that AI. And if you don't do that, then you'll be a little bit behind the curve.
So I think there's what I've observed in my musings about technology is that new technologies come, and at the first stage, anything that's new gets completely ignored, except for a bunch of people who like to geek out and right at that groundswell, at the forefront.
Yeah.
They see the early tremors way out, right? And then some technologies pick up steam. And the adoption of ChatGPT, for example, has been at an incredible pace. I think that's where we're seeing that the way technology can spread now, it's just happening much faster than it ever did before. And we get to these points where I think it has enough momentum now that we know it's not going to go away. It's going to only keep on growing. So if we accept that, whether it's AI, which is the topic of the day right now, of course, and has been for the last half year or so, I think blockchain is going to have a comeback. I don't think blockchain is dead yet, just so you know. And I think it has actually a role in AI too, or robotics, or technologies we haven't even thought of yet. They're all going to come. They're all going to be incorporated in different ways. So maybe it'll look like the Jetsons, maybe it'll look like something else. But what we have a responsibility to do is, as I mentioned earlier, to be in that space where we are driving the bus if we can, where we're guiding the conversations rather than just being recipients and sort of like getting the tailwind of it all. And our profession, unfortunately, this is one lament I've had for a long time, is very fragmented. There are thousands of libraries just in the US alone, and there are thousands and thousands of libraries globally, but we don't collaborate in the way we could so that we build the products the way they should. And one of the things that is, my analogy and quip for this is when the internet came in and search engines started, right? Like there were who runs like Ask Jeeves or, all of these different search engines, Alta Vista, right? That existed, that were awesome once upon a time. But then Google actually came in and they were number 20 or something on the big ones. And then they took over and nobody could catch up. And Bing is also, maybe becoming relevant. But what happened is libraries did not get on that fast enough. The business of search, quite frankly, before those search engines, where would you go? You would go to the library. It's the only place where you could get information. But we did not participate and we were left behind. I think we are right now at a similar inflection point with AI. I think if we are investing, if we're building right now, we can be participants in that. And we can address so many of the issues that we have about Sophia Noble wrote the Algorithms of Oppression book. There are others who have written about that. There's Data Cartels. I forget the author of that book. There's so many different people who are writing about the problems that you run into when you let, and I'm not like anti-capitalist or anything, but there are commercial entities who they're better capitalized, they're more focused, they're more structured to be successful in the development. And so they are driving the conversations. And one of the things that I keep on hearing, and I think it's kind of humorous, but it's also like every joke is a half truth, right? Like the inventors of ChatGPT, they're called OpenAI, except for there's nothing open about them. It's a lie. Like they should be closed AI. What we need to do, in my opinion, is we actually need to build the OpenAI. We believe in principles of open. We allow and believe in the principles of open software and community engagement and community involvement. So that's where I see us working. And yeah, maybe I'm a little Pollyanna on that one because I do think we can and we should. The reality is it's going to be a blend of commercial interests and what we are going to build. And like I said, I think we have a responsibility to do it. And that's why I'm excited to be working at a university with an high school that's as progressive as ours, because we have those conversations and we have hopefully the access to the students, the talent who want to build with us.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing?
Yeah.
So again, the mission of libraries certainly is to provide quality, relevant information for our users. So I think that I just came up with the meme. So technology solves problems and technology causes problems. And I think that both of those are going to be very relevant in terms of how we organize information, how we archive information. So prior to this presentation, we were testing the auto transcription, right? And Mike and I were just kind of recognizing that the auto transcription, if it doesn't recognize a word, will just fill in the blank with something completely false. It won't say it can't do it. It'll just say blah, right? Well, that's a perfect example of how we are the arbiters of quality information. And so as we use ChatGPT to solve problems or artificial intelligence to solve problems, it's going to cause problems. And so that is going to be a big part of making sure that our data is quality. And so when it does the work, we must have people behind it, AI behind it, checking to make sure it's not inserting complete fiction. Because once that gets into the peer-reviewed scholarly body of knowledge, we're all in trouble, right? And so that's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun because in the end, tech is about helping other people and doing more and solving problems.
Absolutely.
I wondered if you had an answer to the question since you're writing a book on it.
Well, it's actually contributed. Authors are contributing to some editing.
You're editing.
But I mean, no, I mean, I'm just interested in different perspectives at this point. I
Right.
do think it is challenging and I still have questions. Totally agree with everything they said. But with regard to how we address misinformation that is generated because it feels so authentic and true,
Right.
and authoritative.
Yeah, it's a great liar.
How do we discern between fact and fake? And I think that's a challenge, not just for our field,
Yeah.
but for people generally. Yeah. And I don't have an answer to that, but I have a lot of worries around that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll just to riff off that for a second. I mean, the reality is, in my opinion, and I don't have the answer, misinformation is as old as information.
Right.
There's always been that. And what I've been pondering, and I have no answer this time, is what is the standard that we should hold AI to? What is the standard of the technology? Because we all know, just because you found it on the internet, you can't trust it, right? Like we've all learned that over time. So is it that how do we teach ourselves collectively as a society that AI is also a tool that guides us towards things, guides us maybe to information, hopefully correct. Maybe we can build it in the university ecosystem or in the library ecosystem in a way that it only points to authoritative, but that's only one implementation of what will be many, many different AIs that exist. So I think what we really need to figure out is what are the standards, and I would imagine that we're going to end up in a system where there will be almost like a certification to the AI about whether it's an academic-based one that's like maybe based only on factual information in the university versus like the open internet kind of one. So I'm trying to predict the future a little bit, and if I was really good at that, I'd probably
I
be
think
sitting here, but you know what I mean? Like,
it's interesting because when I did research many years ago around like, there's a whole body, as you know, of research around making relevance decisions in search, and how do you decide something's relevant or
Okay.
not, or how do you decide if something's authoritative or not. And the standards by which we have historically measured and assessed whether something is relevant or authoritative make no sense in today's AI environment.
sorry.
And so we currently, I'm not aware of the tools that we can have to facilitate that.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing people being misled,
Oh, yeah.
quoting misinformation. It's
Sure.
happened to me to somebody's quoting my textbook with content that doesn't exist in the textbook at all, yet it's attributed to me in some crazy way. So we're already seeing this information happening. How do we combat that? I know I don't want to be keep beating it. That's what I have a lot of concerns around that.
Yeah,
These
it's a real question.
these hallucinations and made up
Yeah.
information. I mean, there was this case recently where a lawyer presented a case, and the cases that he was citing
Yeah,
were not real.
Didn't exist, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just heard today that he was fined, and part of the fine by the judge was to write apologies to all the judges that were incorrectly. So he had to write letters to them.
Good.
Now, maybe that's a good way for anybody who does not have the wherewithal to maybe check their reference citations. But the sad thing is, like, those kind of issues existed before. That's why I'm saying, like, what is the standard we hold the AI to? And a lot of it is kind of what Anthony said, like, TVs are not replacing us, AI is not going to replace us. It's going to hopefully augment us and lead to a next level of a quality of living and a standard of living. But for that, the tools have to be built right. Sal Khan, who founded the Khan Academy, just gave a great TED talk a couple of months ago. And he talked about how in Khan Academy, they built something called Khan Amigo, which is basically every student has a guide on the site. That's an AI that's there for them to chat and help them. And it's very similar to what we said with the drone. We can put this drone on the table, but you need somebody that you can talk to who can help you out with it. And for some people, humans are great and they're available. Sometimes they're not available. What if each one of us had a device that we could say, how do you fly a drone? And it gives us some instructions and it provides some, and that's kind of like the idea behind that. So I can see a future where that may be that we all have our own individual AI kind of companions that could help us. But
Virtual parrots right on our shoulder.
that's right.
And
I love that you guys are both so positive about this.
Can I just say, so I did just real quickly, I guess this is an announcement, if you will. So Mike and I are involved in an initiative that's called the AI Institute that will, I think, answer Dr. Hirsch's question, which is that we are going to be working with the UC system and the CSU system to identify how libraries are going to be using AI. And we're going to be working as EDUs to understand their needs of the future. And so we're going to then make sure that those skill sets are there so that we're collectively working to try to predict the future. And I think that's the other part to this information age is we have access to data and statistics that pretty much tell us where things are going, right? And so now the key is to prepare for it.
So that's one of the sort of real answers to the question of how does libraries and library professionals have an impact, a long-term impact on the making sure that we're accessing information that is true to the best of our abilities.
Yes, and that's a real positive way to look at it for everyone, right? So think about your GPS, right? Your GPS gets you to where you're going pretty quickly because it's using 15, 20, 25 satellites. Pretty cool, right? Pretty neat. And so I really do think, and I think a lot of people are predicting that's where the digital world is going. So we're going to have those virtual parrots there that are going to be able to tell us, how do I lose 10 pounds? Blah, 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 right? Or how do I've got a mole on, but it takes a lot of that guessing out of the way. Who do we call? Where do we go? Right. And I think AI is going to be able to find us a lot of answers for that so quickly.
we're kind of coming to a stopping point, but I just wondered if there was anyone else in the room, and there's one question.
There's one question, yeah.
Up here, but I just wondered if there's anyone in the room that has a question. Looked like you wanted to.
Actually, my
speak.
question I wrote down here is related to Dewey's question.
Okay.
Did you actually say that reference services are entirely online?
Yes, the just in case reference service is entirely online currently. So our reference desk is now a virtual reference desk. But to the question there, SJSU librarians are working in person and also online. What we're trying to do is meet our community where they need to be met. And what we learned is that at the reference desk, that transaction wasn't happening. It doesn't mean we're not providing in-person services in the library, but those higher order reference questions were not really happening there. So those are available by appointment. And for that, you make an appointment and you meet with the librarian and get your answers, hopefully.
Well, and let me muddy up the water even further.
Sure.
So we have mixed reality classes now.
Yes.
Right? And so mixed reality will actually do both. So you can actually be in person. We'll have a virtual browser or chat that only you can see, that you can talk to. So anyway, that is certainly, I believe, the wave of the future as well, because now your hands free, you have it right in front of you, you can help,
Yeah.
I mean,
Some version of the metaverse is going to.
oh yeah, 100%.
Did you have a?
I would have a comment, and that is, as a public librarian here working at the King Library. It's true that higher level reference questions are not either from the public or from the university side are very few and far between. It's also true that most of the from our public side, most of the customers that we have are the academic community. And they still come to us because we are people in person to ask questions
100%.
for help.
That's right. That's right.
And I think that should be realized, that should be admitted.
Sure.
Well, remember when the internet came, all libraries are going to shut down, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone has Google. Well, we'll see how that turned out. But the bottom line is you're absolutely right.
And I mean, I could
100%.
say more in terms of technology. I mean, it's if we substitute your drone for an iPhone, for example.
Yeah.
During COVID, that iPhone became very important.
Of course.
And we had people coming when the library opened, wanting help with their iPhones,
Mhm.
or iPads.
100%.
And in person.
That's right.
And that speaks to the importance of
And
libraries and the digital divides and all the help.
And so, I
Yes.
mean, I think the earlier question of how is San Jose State working with its students toward the digital divide is a good one, because I'm wondering what type of remedial service is provided to students.
Well, we have a great center run by Justin.
I know there is a
from
center
that-
that I had, it is available, and I know that that's available too. But I was also concerned, I know that at one time, and Curtis says Thalia may be able to answer to this, there were technology requirements and knowledge for example, engineering students who were entering. I'm not sure if that's still true or not.
You mean for transfer students?
No,
Minimum.
Lucille actually wrote it down very nicely. Does the engineering school have technology skill requirements for beginning students?
I remember looking this up. And seeing
Well, we
that.
do that in engineering 10. Curtis, you helped teach
That's,
that.
well, yeah, I mean, that's why I would
The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
I expected the students to teach me how to use Excel.
But they couldn't.
But Curtis, that's
I was
interesting.
teaching them, but.
So you raise an interesting point, right? And that's something that I learned when I talked earlier about my first job in libraries. There was an expectation that students who are younger than their faculty come in with these advanced tech skills. And exactly, Thalia is shaking her head. The reality is we cannot assume that. And in fact, it happens to be more wrong than right. So one of the things that I started teaching Excel courses, because as a previous financial analyst, I spent the first part of my career building great Excel models. So I was an expert in that, but that was a skill set that I brought that ended up finding an audience and made a big difference for a lot of people. And that is one of the ways that we have to understand why we have to mediate, why we have to be available. We have to create courses and teaching and learning opportunities. And that was the point I was making earlier, because your faculty member might expect you to know this stuff already, but you don't. And so where do you go and ask that question in a safe way? Because it wasn't taught in high school, it wasn't taught in undergraduate, but you needed to graduate. And so that's where libraries often come in. So we like to always say in libraries, nobody graduates from the library, but nobody graduates without the library. So
And on that
Nice.
note,
on that note,
I just wanted to summarize a little bit, and then we have opportunity for the folks online to go into one or two online chat rooms and have conversations there. And then we all can have conversation here and some food. There's a lot of food left. And I just wanted to summarize what I've heard from both of you is that it's not really, it's the values and the skills around problem solving, courage, valuing equity, valuing doing good for people. It's these kinds of things that libraries can bring to tech and do as good a job as we can. And that is where it's going to help mitigate the problems of technology. And are we going to solve every problem of technology? No, but it's not an actual like this skill or this, but it's more of our values and our ability to explore and experiment and problem solve. It's the things libraries and librarians have always done. Librarians have always done this, and they'll continue to do it. And as we do that, hopefully we can be in larger groups going forward with UCs and with other California State universities and groups of people where we can bring some force to the way that technology is coming into our lives on the larger scale, as well as one-on-one with our students.
hence the evolving library.
Hence the evolving library. How are you all doing out there in the land of outside this room? I did have a question, and I wondered if you all would do something for me if you're all there. I know you're all showing there. Is just write the city that you're in. Where are you all from? Where are you all in San Jose? Are you in? I know I hired someone in my last job, and she's in the Netherlands. Wow. So and I used to work, and so Nashville, Nevada. What other?
And there is a question from Allison about, is she in the right place? Yes, you're in the right place, Allison.
Los Gatos.
It's not only about AI, it's about the evolving library. AI is certainly a big part of it.
That's right.
Yes, it's just a part. It's just up for us right now. California, Napa Valley. So all these people, and this room itself, I wanted to also say this room that we're in right now is made possible for these screens and this technology and these connections by donors. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the little key moments of evolving technology are really funded by people, individuals, small and large amounts, so that things can happen and move forward before the state system can sort of kick in and take it forward to the next place. So I wanted to acknowledge all the donors who are in the room, and thank you all, and who are online, and thank you all. And a lot of the people that are alumni and who work at the library are also donors, and you're all making it happen. It's really important because we can stay connected across all of these places and in this room.
That's right.
So I wanted to thank you all.